Welcome to B Says. Today we get to hear in their own words just what is PREA. So the average viewer most likely has no idea what PREA is. PREA, the acronym, stands for Prison Rape Elimination Act, which is put in place to protect the offenders. This isn't just for women, but for the men too. Sex in prison by law is never consensual and is always classified as rape. It is actually in the title of the act, PREA, Prison Rape Elimination. So let's hear what it actually means from somebody besides me for a change, in their own words.
What PREA is it's the Prison Rape Elimination Act. And what it was for was to protect us. It's supposed to protect inmates and to make sure that people who violate that, including most likely staff, is prosecuted for it. And the state of Idaho has a law enacted, it's the criminal justice system law. And in order for the Reinvestment Act and all of those things to work the way they do to fund the prisons, they have to be in compliance with PREA. And in 8 years, 2016 to 2023, 5 different staff members of the Idaho Department of Corrections and their contractors gave me things and told me they loved me and that they would do anything for me and that I was beautiful, and they told me that they were my friends and they wanted things from me in trade for that. Sexual favors, I let them touch me, I let them kiss me, and I did it for privileges and jobs, and I did it so that I didn't have to go back to shitty sicky where I was beat up and called a rat by a staff member because I wouldn't tell on another staff member, and he got fired for what he did. That's what happened to me, and that's what I reported to the FBI, and I'm not going to tell the rest of it, but I'm going to tell you that it doesn't matter, it's illegal, and I struggle with it because I think I'm pretty of sound mind and I know what I'm doing. But the thing is I was raised in the Idaho Department of Corrections since I was 18 years old. I've never had a man in my life or the Department of Corrections employees. So having a man tell you they love you and that you're beautiful when you don't know that, it makes you feel a type of way for them. It makes you want to protect them and love them. It makes you want to do anything they ask you to do because of the privileges they give you and because of what happens if you don't.
Right. Now that you have a better understanding about what PREA is, you need more information. And if you need more information, feel free to look it up. Even if PREA was not a thing, the state of Idaho should not abide by allowing men or women to be extorted or used or trafficked by IDOC staff. But it does happen, and in the case of IDOC staff, they either are directly involved or actively look the other way. I will direct you to look for more details on this channel in the playlist section. You'll see the Denial of Medical Care playlist. You'll see Justice for the Innocent playlist, and you'll also see Rape of the IDOC Offenders playlist. So how is it that IDOC staff does this when they're supposed to be, what they're supposed to be doing is protecting those who are innocent in prison? And yes, again, those in prison are innocent. They have no consent. They cannot sign contracts, and they cannot even go to bed when they want. They follow orders. They are the very definition of what a compromised individual is that needs help doing everything. So yes, they are innocent. So IDOC staff, as I said earlier, look the other way, and then they actively blame the offenders time after time after time. At first, I could not really wrap my head around how this department, such as the Idaho Department of Corrections, would look the other way when people were ill and had medical needs that were not being addressed. I couldn't wrap my head around that for how could that be happening and why would it be justified at any level. But listen, to these offenders, and in their own words, you'll see what actually happens. Now keep in mind that each of the staff members that these women are mentioning are staff members who have been promoted. Do you know why they've been promoted? They've been promoted because they look the other way. They have been promoted because they don't want to get anybody in trouble because they don't want to rock the boat. And this is what IDOC wants, and this is how they promote. In the first one, you'll hear about Shanae Meacham. That's her name. She's been promoted multiple times over the years and is an example of how staff looks the other way, allows their staff to prey on the offenders because she oversees them, and then blames the offender instead of protecting the offender. And in this case, now you have a loyal staff member to somebody in leadership who allowed IDOC to prey on innocent offenders who cannot say no. And later, the staff, in this case Meacham, is rewarded. Now, take note also that Meacham was also involved in the cover-up involving Rebecca Capolino, when she not just facilitated sex between the men and women, but also between herself and others. And then Meacham also helped shield that staff member too. Now, because of IDOC's penchant to blame the offenders for IDOC actions, I highly doubt a PREA packet was written up during this Capolino incident because all the sex was consensual. Again, as we know, there is no such thing as consensual sex in prison. It is always going to be rape. And IDOC is filled with rapists and staff who look the other way when it happens. And in Miss McClure's own words, let's see how it works. Let's hear her clip.
The officer was in the closet with me, and Lieutenant Meacham came out as soon as the door hit the lower, or you could hear the sound for the janitor's closet. Tyson backed out of the closet, and Meacham came up on him, and then she said, "You go down. I'm reassigning you to medical," and she sent me home. The next day, I was redlined for tobacco.
So this is the way. Meacham sees a staff member taking advantage of an offender in a closet and redlines the offender and accuses them of having tobacco. Yeah, so a woman who is being victimized in prison by IDOC staff is then blamed by a woman, Meacham, and given sanctions while this offender is being preyed upon. IDOC staff literally can make up whatever they want about offenders and it will stick, and no one will ever say anything, because if you do, you're gone. Here Meacham again protected a staff member and punished the offender instead. Meacham looked the other way. This is the IDOC way. And just like again, Rebecca Capolino, where Meacham was as well, she looked the other way just as she is directed to by leadership, because they are okay with offenders being victimized by staff, because the offenders are the criminals, not IDOC staff ever. So the next clip you're going to see is one where Cherie Nelson talks about reporting what is happening at a work site. Now, as you may or may not know, IDOC staff has multiple contracts for inmate labor. It should be noted again and noted extensively that these contracts exploit innocent people who have no say and no rights. In fact, if they decide that they are sick or cannot work or want to quit, they could be leveraged, pressured, intimidated, bullied, and written up. The point I'm making is that they can even get a DOR, which of course, I keep saying, DORs is what keep people in prison. So if you think for a second that IDOC does not employ these tools to force, compel labor to fulfill those contracts, you'd be sadly mistaken. This also includes overriding DORs as well, which means they're not holding offenders accountable, which of course makes it even more dangerous for not just the staff, but the general public, because they're releasing those offenders out into the community. And the employer? Well, the employer also exploits this 100%. The employer can have poor working conditions. The employer can exploit to the point where they both are taking advantage of both the men and the women. So let's look at this next clip in Miss Nelson's own words. And keep in mind, this is once again, another staff member who's been promoted multiple times. And this staff member looks the other way, just like Meacham did. All right, let's see the clip.
And not only that, but steltzer, girls were coming to steltzer about inappropriate stuff going on at the jobs. And his quote was, I heard him say this, literally to them, sounds like an HR problem. Maybe you should take it to HR.
Yeah, like you guys. Yeah, like you guys have HR like at your disposal. In this case, now that we've watched that clip, this person, Steve Steltzer, he is not taking what is being reported to him seriously. Offenders report things all the time, and when I personally was hearing things at first, I had my doubts because sometimes things just sounded so off. And let's be straight, offenders do lie, and they lie about many things. And so as staff, you have to do due diligence and have follow through. But to refer inmate to HR at a work site where they are already actively exploiting that offender, that rises to a level of incompetence that is it's offensive and it's dangerous. So, but that is what IDOC does. So what IDOC leadership says and does in a blanket statement is that all offenders lie and they are all complete criminals. It is a premise, however, that is not supported by facts. Offender after offender was denied medical care, and I've documented that over and over and over again. Now, offenders are starting to come forward about being raped. These are not fabrications. This is the IDOC way. I'll repeat it again. This is the way. You do not make reports on what offenders say. You claim or say that the offenders are lying and that nobody is going to do anything wrong with the offenders because the offenders, of course, are all the criminals, and so they get what they deserve. So no matter what, they get what they deserve. They deserve to have their medical treatment denied. They deserve to be raped, tortured, beaten, and killed. They deserve to have their basic human rights denied. And if you're unaware, almost 90% of those who are currently incarcerated with the IDOC system are nonviolent offenders, and most of them are there for drug crimes. So what are we doing to these nonviolent offenders? We're actively demonstrating to these innocent people who are attempting to pay for their crimes while they are actively being compromised in every manner and victimized on top of that. If it looks difficult to report anything as an offender, keep this in mind. This is just the tip of the iceberg. If you believe for a second that those who are currently incarcerated are going to step forward willingly and ask for help, you're the delusional one. This is going to stay very, very quiet until IDOC leadership is not just disbanded, but also prosecuted as the criminals that they are. Offenders are tormented and tortured and afraid to say anything because if they do, they will suffer retaliation by IDOC leadership, which impacts any chance they have of leaving prison. Everybody that this leadership group has promoted over the last 5 to 10 years will come after them because, as you can see, IDOC protects the predators and actually looks the other way. And they will continue to protect each other. They're the criminals. And of course, I'm not talking about the offenders who have the felonies. This is Bryan Says. Please like and subscribe.